What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and this is another Coffee Talk Friday where we set 15 minutes on the clock, try to go over everything. Today's might be a little bit longer, but we're going to get that set. And I believe this is episode 121. I didn't look before I started, but here we are. So today's episode, I wanted to talk about obviously, as you can if you've seen any of my reels or anything, I don't know. So this is a new podcast platform that I'm using. I've moved away from Libsyn. I'm on now using the Spotify's. It doesn't cost anything. It's super nice. But where I'm actually recording is through Riverside, through their free service. So I don't know if the video is coming through or not. But if you can see the video or you've seen reels, you can see that there's, a deer head behind me. So big into hunting. If you're new, if you've been here for a while, you already know I love hunting. So I got into hunting as an adult because of my wife. The story is, for those of you who know, actually, before I get into the story, today's podcast is for someone who is new and thinking about getting into hunting. You've wanted to hunt. It's been something you wanted to do and you haven't been able to do it yet. Or you're not sure what the steps are. So I'm going to be very biased because my experience is with Pennsylvania. So this is going to be more towards the northeast of the country. I know all of you listen from all over the country, but in general, a lot of the things I'm about to say are going to apply to people across the board. So bear with me. Again, it is going to be biased towards one area. Every state is going to be different depending on where you're listening. But this is an episode, if you already are an avid hunter, you can send to someone who's been nervous, who wants someone other than, say, yourself. Maybe it's a family member and you're like, yeah, they just never listened to me. Or it's just like a good resource for them to go back through as like, here's the steps I need to do. So this is something I wish I had. And I think I do this every year. So story, how I got into hunting. If you don't know the story. So I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up around hunters. So I grew up in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, very rural, or pretty, I shouldn't say very rural, pretty rural. My family has 40 acres there, and we have a farmer who farms it. So, around that, most of my friends growing up hunted. So I grew up around hunting stories all the time. My dad fishes, he doesn't hunt. So my wife's family, on the other hand, a bunch of avid hunters in there. So when were we engaged yet? I think we were engaged when I started hunting to my wife. So all of a sudden she developed a beef allergy. And I say allergy, it's a sensitivity or something, but she would literally vomit if she ate beef, and she loved beef. So this wasn't like, oh, she didn't like necessarily like not like it. And then it was just like, no, like she loved a good steak. We had red meat quite often. And all of a sudden she would break out in like hives. Her stomach would get really upset. And then eventually it turned into like she would be curled over the toilet throwing up. So, okay, well, no big deal, right? You just cut out red meat, right? Except the problem for my wife is she tends to run anemic. So if you're not sure what that is, it means low iron. So she tends to run anemic. She tends to be low on B12. Red meat is a fantastic source of both of those things. So what do you do? Well, we could buy bison, but we weren't making enough money at the time. I was still not with prices to afford bison all the time to the amount she needed. And she was fine with bison. So we did test it out. She was okay with that. So there's something about beef. We tried grass-fed. We tried just, conventional. Conventional was definitely like, she got upset. We tried, the grass-fed organic. Nope. Still, so something in there. She also has a history of ED from before we were ever in a relationship. So she couldn't take an iron supplement because it just totally messed up her gut. And then going to the hospital for iron infusions just unrealistic with schedule. So it came down to her family gave us some venison. She did fantastic with it. She liked it. She grew up eating bear, venison, all different wild game. So it came down to I'm just going to have to get my hunting license. Like it was something like I was interested in, but then like one day I will, the one day I will do this thing. So if that was, it was okay. Well, I'm going to have to get the hunting license. And to make the long story short, I didn't harvest any deer until the last day of the Pennsylvania rifle season. It was like within the last few hours. I had harvested a nice sized doe, and that gave my wife red meat for quite some time. And then I got some more venison from her family. And then ever since I've been hooked, and we get multiple deer a year now. And that's most of our red meat for the year. So you are looking to get into hunting, especially as an adult, and you might not have any mentors. You might not really know what to do. So let's go through what you need to do, like priorities. First thing to do is get your hunting license. You have to go, like you either go or you can take it online. I know in PA, you can do in person or online. Online was super easy. It does take a little while. You pay a little bit. So view hunting as an investment. So if you're looking to like make meat cheaper, like your grocery bill cheaper, you are going to need to invest some money up front for future years to be cheaper. So if you have to buy equipment we're going to talk about later, you're going to have to pay a little bit up front, but it'll be cheaper down the road as long as you don't fall into the trap of constantly upgrading everything every single year. So first thing you do is you get your hunting license. You have to, or the hunter safety certification, whatever it's called. It's not necessarily your hunting license. Then you actually get your hunting license. So you have to take hunter's ed, hunter safety course, whatever it's called in your state. You have to take that. And you might remember, especially if you're from rural area or even the suburbs, about some of your friends talking about doing it when they were pre-teen or teens. Now it's, you just take it, you learn a lot. It was actually very informative. Not going to make you a great hunter, but it is, at least the Pennsylvania one, I learned a lot about different ways hunting is helps the environment and is, supports the species you're hunting, all the stuff that you don't necessarily learn on, unless you're in hunting spaces. So we get our hunter's ed certification, then we can go and buy our hunting license. Just know when the seasons are. So generally speaking, it's going to be the fall, unless you're doing some spring bear or spring turkey, if your state allows that. So which goes to the next part. What are you hunting? So we're going to figure out what we're hunting, and then when we can buy the licenses for that, and what the licensing procedures are. Every state is different. Some are going to be lotteries. Some are going to be, you'll see like OTC, over the counter, where you can just buy it. So for example, here in Pennsylvania, when you buy your hunting license, you get a spring and fall turkey tag, and you get a buck tag. So you're allowed to harvest one buck whitetail, and you're allowed to harvest one turkey and one in the fall and in the spring. And then you can use that license for all your small game, rabbit, squirrel, etc. However, if you want to do any waterfowl, that is a separate license. You need a federal duck stamp. You need to get a waterfowl or a migratory bird license, which isn't very expensive here in Pennsylvania. But the duck stamp, federal duck stamp, is like at $25. So you do need to get that if you're doing waterfowl. So duck, geese, I think anything migratory, so dove as well. You need to get doe tags here. So if you want to have a chance to harvest a doe, you're going to have to purchase a doe tag when those come out, and that's at a certain date. So you when you buy your license, you'll get this booklet, and it'll tell you all these things, just so you know. But you can also view it online as a PDF. But you're going to have to get so Pennsylvania does in different sections. So for example, 5C, 5B, 5D, 5. These are different sections of the state. There's like 1A, 1B, 1C, and all the way to 5D is the last. And that's like Philadelphia County. So you have to figure out where you're hunting and can you get licenses for that area. Some areas are going to sell it really fast, like in the middle of the state where it's very rural and everybody hunts, they'll sell it much faster than, say, 5D, which is Philadelphia County, where not many people hunt. So what are you hunting? Where are you hunting? What are the licenses for that? You can find that really, really quickly. And there's sometimes some updates, but in general, you can find that pretty quick. So it might sound like a lot. Once you know what you're going to hunt, like for most people, it's going to be like deer. I'm trying to hunt for meat, so chances are you're hunting deer. Okay, great. So you already figure out what you're hunting, and maybe you'll add on a few from that. But the main thing you're hunting, great. Where are you hunting it, and what tags do you want to get? So the other thing is for Pennsylvania and most places, you also need to get extra tags. So you're going to need to add on like a archery tag. If you're going to do flintlock, you're going to have to add on a flintlock tag, depending on what you're going to use to hunt. But the Pennsylvania one is for rifle season when you get it. So you're good for rifle season, but if you want to do archery, then you're going to have to purchase an archery license, which I think is like $12.50 on top of the license fee. So expect to spend anywhere between $30 and $50 for a lot of the Northeast states. It can get pretty expensive in some of the Western states where you're looking at dropping maybe a couple $100. It just depends on your state and your area. Most places have some that are more affordable and then things that are more expensive. Okay, so we figure out you need to get your hunting license or Hunter's Ed, Hunter Safety Course, which will allow you to purchase your hunting license, which is why I'm putting this out now so you can start. Then you need to figure out what are you hunting and where are you hunting. And probably through the Hunter's Ed, you're going to figure out what are you hunting. Great. So are we doing archery or rifle season? There's a ton of different seasons, and I'm going to just talk archery or rifle because those are the basics, but then each state has different things, which I'll briefly touch on. So archery season is going to be run longer. For example, where I am, that's going to be, and every state's different too. But for Pennsylvania, where I am, I'm in special reg area. So it starts in mid-September and runs through January. Whereas rifle season starts at the end of, it starts the Saturday after Thanksgiving and runs basically for 2 weeks. That's it. And then special reg, you get some additional time on the back end of that in January or after Christmas. But for the most part, that's it. Now you can also like do muzzleloader and different things like that. Muzzleloader season here in Pennsylvania is in October, and then we have a flintlock season after Christmas. Pennsylvania is different. Some states, Lauren Leach, who's been on this podcast before, she's down in Tennessee. They have a velvet hunt where I believe that's rifle in Tennessee. So again, it's going to depend on your state, where you're at. So that's where, I'm giving you general information, but you need to figure out what tool are you going to use. The reason for that is, do you need to spend any money up front? Can you borrow a rifle from someone? Do you have one? Like you have your old granddad's? Do you have a bow already? Or do we need to purchase something? We need to set money aside. Are you purchasing both a rifle and a bow? We're going to need to train and get those figure out how you can be effective with both those tools. You're also going to need to have the money to purchase both because they can be expensive. Yes, you can buy things on sale. You don't need the nicest of the nice. I still have my first bow, which is a Bear Cruiser G2, which I think I dropped $300 on, and it was sight, quiver, like pretty much it was a ready to hunt package. So I just needed to buy the arrows. But after arrows release everything else, you're $400, $500 in the hole for just the bow, not even including the rifle. So you need to figure out what are you doing? What can you afford? Are you just able to do which one, and what's most realistic for you? Can you borrow anything? Bows you can't borrow really. So just to let you know that. And then archery, compound or crossbow, where you're using. So you need to figure that stuff out. What are you investing anything? Are you not? Are you able to just go ahead like you have stuff ready to go? Do you need to make an adjustment? So, for example, Pennsylvania, you can't use semi-automatic rifles, but you can use semi-auto shotguns because that makes sense. Throwing slugs out like nothing. But that's neither here nor there. So you can use, you have to use bolt action or lever action rifles. So you need to make sure you are purchasing. Most states allow semi-auto, but you need to be aware. So, for example, if you're like, hey, I have an AR-10, I could just use that. No, because it's semi-auto. Now you can purchase something like the Kali Key and turn it into a bolt action, which is a cool tool. So for, I think it's like $100, maybe a little bit more. So it's cheaper than buying a brand new rifle. You can change the rifle you already have into a bolt action. So that's something you just need to be aware of like, hey, like I could just go out with my AR and use that. Not necessarily. So be aware of that. Be aware of the regulations around archery equipment, rifle equipment, and anything else. There's a ton of regulations. And then your hunter's edge should go over that stuff too. So if you're like, oh, how am I going to remember all this? Your hunter's edge should go over all of this. And that's going to be the first thing you do. So you can make a list as you're going through. Next comes for training for your hunt. So are you tree stand hunting? Are you going really far into public land and you're going to be walking? We need to figure out, what are you doing? Are you in shape enough to get that deer out if that's what you're hunting, or elk, or bigger animals? Are we going backcountry out west? Like, you really need to be in shape. So we need to train for that. You also just need to practice, like with your rifle. If you've never shot before, or you've only shot like a pistol or something, you need to make sure that you are dialed in. Figure out what distance is ethical. With archery, you need to start training. So ideally, about right now, you should start in the spring. If you haven't already, summer would be, the cutoff. Training for 20, 30 yards won't take you very long. Like, you can get pretty confident within a month for that. However, if you're trying to aim for further than that, 40, 50 yards, that's a different story. You're going to need to spend some time training. Now, if you're like, oh, I want to shoot as far as possible, honestly, like, I prefer anything like 30 yards and in is for archery is way, way more comfortable than 40, 50 yards. I train for 50 yards, but I would much rather not shoot that distance. So you need to train for that. And then part of that is also going to be getting into the stand, trying to simulate actual hunting conditions. Because if you're just training like at an archery range or your backyard, and then you get up in a tree stand and there's branches all over, it's very different. So do make sure that you actually get in your stand, because I've had a few instances I've talked about on the podcast before of mess ups in the stand from either my knee being right under because I was sitting while shooting and the bow bounced off my knee, or last year I had my backpack get in the way in front of a big old buck. I didn't expect would turn the way it did, and then that just totally changed how I set up in that stand. So you need to train, and training isn't just working out, it's also like getting out there and trying to simulate to the best of your ability actual hunting conditions. And then the last part is going to be scouting for your hunt. Where are you going to hunt? Figure out where the deer are if you can, kind of know where they're going to come out. And you can do what's called e-scouting too. If you're like, oh, well, it's 2 hours away or further, like I'm just supposed to go out there and check it out. Ideally, yes. Ideally, for best success, yes. But you could also use apps like OnX, even Google Maps or Google Earth, which are free. Onyx has a free app. Or the one I use, Huntwise, is who I used last year, which I really liked. It's more expensive, but I did really like it. So you can use something like that, and you can e-scout. So you can look at the landscape, try to figure out where you would want to set up, things like that. You can look. I'm not an e-scout professional, but there's plenty of guys on YouTube to help you with e-scouting. It's not the same as getting boots on the ground, but it is a great starting place if you're like, I have a couple places I want to check out, or, you know, I really can't get out there. It gives you at least a rough idea of what to expect. And then once you're out there, you also have these points of like, hey, like I want to check these areas out rather than kind of like randomly going through. So, for example, I just checked out a place, went hiking with my daughter, and it's like there's also like scouting out. It's like I had a few points where I wanted to check out. Went to them like, these are awful. These you could you hunt? Yes, but not in the way I was expecting. Like, these are not good spots whatsoever. So I had these spots that on the map look pretty decent, and then in reality, it's like, nope, they were just terrible. So that's an example of, hey, e-scouting wouldn't have led to success, but it did give me areas where, hey, I checked them out. I had these areas in mind. I cross them off the list, which means there's less area now for me to actually go. Like, even if I never went back, I'm like, okay, I have these other areas that are probably going to be better that I could check out for hunting. Or I found other areas while there, like, hey, this wasn't on my list. Now it is. So, last thing is in terms of other hunting equipment. So, archery and rifle. Obviously, you need a rifle. You need to sight that in, which means getting a scope on it. And I've had success, if you're like wondering, I've had really good success for entry level rifles, the Savage, and then you can get some of them with a Bushnell scope. Is it the nicest? Absolutely not. But for tree stand hunting, they've worked fine. They've held their zero, which means the reticle hasn't moved around. So you can sight that in for 100 yards, 50 yards, 200 yards, whatever you want, and you're going to be okay. You might want to upgrade it in the future, probably the scope. For archery equipment, I told you what I have. You can always get better. Like, you can go with a Matthews or a Hoyt or something else. You can drop $1,000 before even adding like a release, a sight, a rest, or anything. It can get very expensive. So that's why I'm like, entry level, here's what to do. If you're one like, I have the money, I'm just gonna, instead of buy nice or buy twice, you're just like going all in, great, do that. But if you're like, I want to try out hunting, I want to do that, do not drop thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars on equipment when you're like unsure, because if you do get into it, you're going to upgrade. But like my first rifle, I ended up buying, which was a decent rifle, but I'm like, it's too fucking big. It is too big for what I want. If I was going out west and hunting, it's perfect. Like, it's a good long range rifle. It's good for if I want to do precision rifle competitions, which is something, it's a bucket list thing I want to do. But for tree stand hunting, it's too goddamn big. The rifle I got my wife, perfect. It's much smaller. It is much easier to move around in the tree stand. So, also on the same note, like, you might buy something, you're like, oh, this is perfect. And then in reality, you're like, never mind. This is a giant pain in the ass. So everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. You're not going to learn that. It's just like listening to this podcast. It's going to be out in the field. You're going to learn that. So other equipment, if you're doing archery, you're going to want a rangefinder, kind of like with golf, but they make ones more for hunting, which the hunting ones work a little bit better in low light conditions, which is what you're going to be hunting in the morning and in the evening. That's when the deer come out. So you're going to want to get a rangefinder, and you're going to want to make sure you know your distances when you're in the stand, the blind, wherever you're hunting. or even just when you're practicing. If you don't go to like archery range where you know known distances, you're going to need to use that so that you sight in your pins correctly. Expect for compound bow or even a crossbow, if you're using a sight on that, you're going to want to make sure that you have that sighted in. If you're using a traditional bow, then that's you're still going to kind of want to know distances so you can kind of guesstimate, especially as a beginner. You don't need one super expensive, but I will say I have a very cheap one. In low light, you can't see anything. We have the Vortex 1000 or something. That one works way better in like first thing in the morning, right as first light, which is legal hunting light. I can use it right before that or at that time. The other one, not so much, which means I have to wait a little bit longer. So I'll go out. I'll know distances when we set up the stance and everything. I will use it for like middle of the day when we're doing that with the cheaper one. But when I'm in the stand, like I prefer having the Vortex one, which is actually my wife's. So if she's coming out, she has that one. So just be aware of that equipment. In terms of camo, you don't need like jackets and pants. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars. This stuff can get very expensive, so you don't necessarily need that. I would recommend purchasing high quality merino wool base layer. Do spend some money there because that'll work for pretty much any situation. Like you can dress it down for earlier season. You will use that almost every single season. And then the wool is because it's water repellent. It will help keep the smell away, which deer are very good at smell. So I would recommend you purchase that and some really nice wool socks to keep your feet warm. Then in terms of your outer camo, like I have like still like the cheap Cabela's like entry level. You can always add layers underneath of it. I don't have as many pockets as I'd like, but that's not necessary. Binoculars can be nice to have, but it's more like nice to have and depends on your situation. If you already have binoculars, you can probably use the ones you already have. Just test them out, like test them out in like different conditions, foggy, rainy, cold, etc. See if they fog up on you or not. But binos are one of those things. I have a bino harness. I didn't have it the first couple of years. I like it now because I also stuff my phone there. I have a knife I always keep on me. I keep there's a thing for cleaning the lenses, and then I keep an archery like a bow wrench in there. That way, if I get in the stand and find anything loose on my bow, I can tighten it. If my glasses, obviously I wear glasses, or the rifle lens gets dirty for whatever reason, or it's sprinkling and it rains getting on there, I have that cloth to keep it clean and keep it clear. Yes, you could cover the lens, but sometimes, dirt like has a way of getting into things. So, or you accidentally smudged it without realizing, and then you get out and you realize there's a big old smudge in it. So I can quickly clean that. So I keep stuff on there. I keep a flashlight in there, but you can keep all that stuff in your backpack as well. You don't need a fancy backpack, though I wouldn't recommend necessarily Velcro. You can just use a regular backpack. But in terms of camo, I still have entry level. I just have nicer base layers now, and you can add on over time. Again, if you're just dipping your toe in, you're like, I kind of want to try it out. I don't know if I'm going to love it or not. Don't drop a ton of money. In fact, a lot of people don't even have camo and have success, especially rifle hunting. Archery, it's a little bit more important, but you can get really like entry level stuff, especially early season. If you're in a warmer part of the country, like September here is pretty warm. September down south, definitely warm. You probably just need like a long sleeve t-shirt. I say a long sleeve because the mosquitoes can get really, really bad early season while you're sitting still, and you have to be still and not move too much, and they're buzzing around. So I always find that face covering, so balaclava, I think it's called. I use those, especially early season. I have a very lightweight one that helps keep the mosquitoes off. It makes you look like a camo ninja, but mostly I use it because it helps keep the bugs off. So only like I'll pop my nose out because I don't like having my nose in there because it causes my glasses to fog up. But basically, my nose and my eyes are the only things you can really see. Everything else is like covered up, so bugs have a hard time. So again, entry level, if it gets cold, you can survive in the cold, but do know the limits of your equipment too. So if you're seeing it's like it's going to be -20 with the wind chill, and you don't have the right gear like to go out for that for hours upon hours, like do know when you need to call it and come inside, or that you're not going at all too with lower quality camo and gear. And the reason there's no like one-stop shop is if you're just doing rifle, you can get like more like cold weather gear. But if you're going from September through January, like big temperature shifts, you might be dealing with 85 degrees in September on a random day to, with the wind chill in the negatives, especially out west, you'd definitely be in the negatives with wind chill come November, December, January. So it's a big shift in temperatures that you're going to deal with. And when you get those, like the deer like to move when it's colder. So I err on the side of being a little too cold, getting gear for on the colder side, but do realize like when you get into the more like extreme temperatures, the price of that gear goes up. And so over time you can be like, okay, well, X, Y, and Z. So like here, it doesn't act like it's southern Pennsylvania. It doesn't get all that cold all that often during hunting season. Sometimes it does. We've had some snow during like rifle, but it's really like not that cold. Maybe teens first thing in the morning, which some of you are like, oh my God, that's really cold. But when you're getting gear for like the negatives, like it's not that cold. And then like by the time the sun comes out, you might be 30s, even 40s. If you have gear to survive in the teens and it's 40 degrees out, like you can be sweating your butt off while sitting in your stand. And if you move around, you really overheat. So that's why I said go, basic jacket, basic camo pants, nicer merino base layer. Because even so let's say you don't hunt ever again. You're like, you get one season, maybe 2 seasons in, that merino base layer, anytime you go like any winter activities, it's going to be nice. Like you can use that for everything. You don't need it. It's a base layer. You can get whatever color. Nobody's going to really see it. It's comfortable. Versus the camo jacket and camo pants. And then you can always upgrade those things later on. If you are like, oh, like I have sweatpants. Like that was the first pair of camo pants I had. You can just wear like, say, green or brown, say like moisture wicking, like khaki type pants or work pants. Like you could wear that early season and be fine. Is it ideal? No. But the big thing is not moving. So you're just like your air, like camo is going to let you move a little bit more and the deer not notice it over like if you're just wearing khakis and stuff. But as long as it's like a more dark, natural colors. So like brown, olive green, or grays would be ideal for pants. So you could also just be like, I don't know if I'm going to continue. Well, use some pants for hiking. Chances are if you're into hunting, you're already into hiking and you're going to be doing some hiking to scout out. So if you have pants for hiking, you could always just start with that early season and then season 2, season 3, upgrade them to some like lighter weight pants for those times where it's too hot out. There's been many times I've been in the sweatpants and just sweat my butt off, like lower layer, then upper layer is like very thin layer. You're like, oh my goodness, it's so hot. A basic camo moisture wicking shirt up top if it tends to be warm during hunting season for you. If not, the jacket's fine. You can always unzip that. And that's where like flannel comes in handy, because deer don't see color very well. They see blues very well. But that's why you see people wear like the red check, like the classic, like almost like lumberjack look is also like the hunting look of like the buffalo check, the red check, flannel, and like, so it's like you wear that with khakis. It's like deer actually don't really see those colors all that well. So, and then the flannel actually breaks up your outline. So you can kind of just wear that. But they see blues way better than humans do. So don't, like, blue jeans, not ideal, even though plenty of people do wear that. And then I wouldn't recommend wearing a ton of blue. Anyways, this is going on long enough, so I don't want to make it so long. Yeah, we're at 35 minutes. I don't want to make it so long that it is overwhelming for you, or then if you're sending this to someone who's new getting into it. The big thing, go back, Hunter's Ed course. Make sure you do that first. Make sure you download or get the booklet for the hunting license, or if you purchase hunting license, you read through that so you understand more of what your state needs. And if you have questions about Pennsylvania, you can reach out to me, or you can post. So we have the Facebook community for this podcast. It's literally called Wild Nutrition Podcast Community on Facebook. You can always post in there as well, so you can join that and post there for questions about if you're new to hunting, because there's lots of hunters in there. But this is a great place to start. If you're interested, it's definitely something like you can do, but you need to start now. So it's not so overwhelming in the middle of summer when you only have a few months to get ready. You do want to start now in the spring so that you can just do piece by piece by piece, not overwhelm yourself. You're ready to go. And then come September or October, you can start with archery, or whenever your state has rifle season, you can roll right into that if you do one or the other. Anyways, if you enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Leave a review. On Spotify, you can leave a review below the episode. Please rate the show 5 stars if you haven't already, as that helps the show push out to others so more people can find it. It helps the algorithm. The more reviews we get, the more people see the show, and thus the show grows, and then I can do either more episodes for you guys, get more guests, etc. Anyways, appreciate you guys, and happy fucking Friday.